okay? So in order to know those paths of the Bodhisattva ourselves, first we have to know them before we meditate on them. In order to know them, we have to hear about them. True, isn't it? Because we have this opportunity now, we might not recognize its fortune. We don't know where we will go when we die. We might not get that chance to hear these teachings again. So the fortune of being able to study this right now, recognizing that and rejoicing in that.
Hoya, that do you nanga choju give set and show you the dog do line on the melon. Suzu give us give us a show with the jenny, how what do? And Tandang to make all to the Mima wish you visit and that I'm gonna she the Shishimba, to musical mare to do. Maraze Tangi and Akalas to Bukashi says, I am. That is it, Padolo do Yoro. Kalas says almost Boomango. You know, but from Makashi says on Chesa. Tizoeda, Padolo do Yoro. Kiranzo the Lagachi to put in the Mango say, Chesa, but Manze so chetar, that's so much. Chesa to zo Padola de Dera. That's a good swimmer, Simji. The Guinea was at the Paduching Gratus. Trevor Shaw, some Melam, the Melam Yavohin Sora that day. And Sanjo Melam Chick, Lurch at Dunshos, Tosh, or Lurch at Loshos, some not in this Tangi Tangiro.
Visualizing in the space in front, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas collecting our virtue and recalling Michael. Not only just recalling Michael at heart, but all those who have died or are dying in that sense, not just humans, insects dying all the time that we have killed. In fact, I will have killed some whilst eating today, this evening, walking here. They all experiencing the bardo as well. And you, when you go about your work, is sure you will have killed insects as well. So we have all killed. So now this process of bardo, in that sense, dedicating the prayer to good birth from that bardo. And when we recite, we should recite in a relaxed manner, so that as we go through the recitation, we can reflect on each verse.
Oh, yeah. Tadana de online you need to Kunzo the Beja the Tadichi to maybe in the Kiranzo money sauce, money online. You not money size de astro.
For those of you online who don't have the King of Prayers in front of you, please recite Mani or Mani Padme Hum as we recite.
Yeah, start now. Wagona vision the Gawajin, the Shobana, Daji, Temora, so I Chandel, the Chinese, the Jesus, which is so I. Yawaja, the Naja, the Jedi, Deva Sanjana, Jidenda, Nakanaji. Kaya Maja, the Daran, Santa Shinjur, Basan, Chojo, the Chanjo, water, Sanjay, the Hawaii, Chojo, Sanjay, the Dada, the Dwagon, Chanjo, the Tumba, Chanjo, Wada, Dwagon, and Jordan. Seragun, the Joa, the Jawa, Sambojawa, the Jawa, the Maya, the Dada Maya, Jimmy, Jawa, Hayaka, the Region, and the Tumuga, the Me. Moda da mi ga na na do go na da na je da tam je ga je da je de je pa re je ma da de je de na je je di wa ga na de wa da wa je de da ma le ye de sho je le da ni mo de je de na na de je de do shi da be ma je me je wa je ni da na ga do me lo je xin ge chen da je da je da mi so do me da de shi de wa da la do wa do je do wa da je la ne pa ma je chen je wa je de da je si je da je da Samboja da nera jawa mama gawa gande me jawa tada jawa thane le danga na de ve se nya jawa da na me lan da ye da la me ma de wa da sambo jawa de ne da la ya da de wa ye de da ke na ye de me san ye se je ko be ko ma na mu so da ye da ke mama gawa gande me jawa de da la ya chawa je je jawa na je de me je de chen je jawa Samboja na ba jawa ye mama gawa gande jawa ye si wa da je de yan ko ye so na ye she da ne me se Tabda shira di se na da da yu de gu je me se se je je du je de na du je se je na shin de san je se je san je se je na ju wa da chen ju ju wa je chen ju je wa ju je da wa chen ju je wa ju je da wa ye de da ma le tan je ju da zang je la du song ce yi je san je ja zo shi na ja zo na ke wa ja zo ji je su je na je je wa gu je su ye na Dua kunje zamba je nya sanje suma da de jo wa je tu sun shi bi ja wa dan je la ko lu chu na ro de ko da de da ge ya sun ya ye ze o lo ye to je da ye da je ma wa ge wa dan je chu wa ye ge je ge da ye ka ya ge wa de da je da ge je che ne jo wa da de zo je wa me ye sen ga ge da ge je la de wa ye da de da ge ne je ma je ka ya de zo je wa de wa ye de da je je de je wa de da ma le je ne jo wa de ge wa da je je Kaya ma je je de ru ma na de da ru ba sa je sha ma na nya ngen de wo ru de ju wa ne gu mo gu ne de da ja ku de yu be zu de gu ne gu we de we da na ne gu de yu ne ju we da na ne gu de ju wa cha ma da je gu ne ju we su na da na ye cha wa me wa ju we yi she do shi ra da na de de da na na cha ju da na ya da zu ju ye le ji da na ye de yu mo da na gu de ju je je du je da na do me re de je sang bo ju we do je zo wa je shi na je zo na ba de Sanje jazo da ye jawa je chuna jazo ra de je je ishe jazo ra de thwa je chowa jazo nama da Mulan jazo ra de jawa je sanje jazo ra de je shi je kawa jazo mi je jawa je kanya jazo she wa jawa Chanje je we melan de ne je sangpo je we chanje wa se ye gu ma lu
virtue I have created. By offering this prayer of the body sattva practice, may all the positive aspirations of beings be fulfilled and satisfied. Through creating limitless positive potential, by dedicating this prayer of Samanthabhadra's deeds, may all beings drowning in the torrent of suffering enter the presence of Amitabha. Through this king of aspirations, which is the greatest of the sublime, helping infinite wonders in samsara, through the accomplishment of the scripture dazzling with Samanthabhadra's practice, may suffering realms be utterly emptied of all beings.
많이 된 거지 당고 힘들어.
그래서
그래서 이대 시셔서 이대 싱글어.
징그러워?
이래서 이공 공기나가 이나마를 세트. 예, 심지에 세대대로 탐지 이걸 그다지 유명해서 그들이 참다. 이겨봐야 뭐지 파마 최유세 농가. 최유세 농가 파마 최유진 파마 찬신지. 어디에 지금 겨울에서
Everyone should know the mental recitation of the money, visualizing in the space in front Chinrezek, the protector Chinrezek, Buddha of compassion. So we do that. We do one mala of Om Mani Padme Hum, and then we visualize that those beings we are praying for are born in a place where there is Dharma and where there are parents that are whose minds are in line with that Dharma. And then also purifying all of the beings' non-virtuous obscurations as well. Yeah. Lamarus. George Jamaluba, there's Alagoba, so. I didn't. Yep. Yep. Loma. No. There is that connection, isn't there, in terms of the prayers we have done, the virtues of the Dharma prayers we have done, and then there's a material connection we have with Michael. He did attend the Sunday classes, but on Sunday he presented me with a Bodhi leaf from the Bodhi tree, and I had the sense when he gave me that leaf that he wanted to say something. You know, there was a sense of longing I felt from him deeply that he wanted to say something. So because he gave me that leaf and because he would constantly attend the Dharma classes, we have that connection with him through that material level and through the Dharma. Yeah. As it says in the Lumbram teachings about impermanence and death, we might often recite those words without really meaning hitting home for us. But in this case, because their death has occurred to someone we're familiar with, someone we know, it is really going to give us some feeling around the fact that not only that death is definite, but its time is uncertain. It should deepen our understanding. Yeah, and of course, at death, so many kind of gross aspects of mind cease. So there's a type of absorption of cessation there, isn't there? Gross. Okay. It happens that the mental consciousness depends on the four elements, the body and so forth. So at the dissolution of the elements, the mental consciousness, also the gross levels of the mind also dissolve. So that goes in stages. One starts to lose the sensate of smell and of taste. And then also one starts to forget the names of parents. So that faculty of gross discrimination starts to abate. Well, for some of us these days, we don't even need to wait for death for that to happen. We can forget the names of the nearest and dearest. But anyway, what's really being said is that those faculties of discrimination are not clear at the time of death, and that process of dissolution or the withdrawal of those discriminations begin. And that process happens at death, so there might be some experience of that where the grosser level of the senses manifest no more. They abate. It happens, doesn't it? And this happens for those that don't necessarily meditate in their life at death. Yeah. The bodhisattvas, however, also, of course, abate or practice the dissolution of such gross levels of feelings and discriminations, but they are doing that, training in that solely for others' benefit. They are doing that. So then it is the state that they don't give rise to those gross feelings of attachment and aversion because they know how to subdue them. And also the hearers, we talk about being fed up with emotions or being at the behest of our emotions, but when they meditate, it is such a relief because they are no longer having to follow these gross levels of feelings and emotions that produce desire and attachment. It's true, isn't it? For us, for them, it is that they are fed up with it. So they train in that through their meditation. But for us, from morning to night, we are so under the sway of those gross levels of the discriminations and feelings. Yeah, we go around and around like that. That is it. Now, each of the tenant schools has their own presentation of this absorption of cessation. We left off looking at Majjhimika Prasangika, the middle way, consequentialists. Now we look at our own school, let's say the autonomous, middle way autonomous school, page 61 at the top, the fourth of the four tenets. Nada. Looked at first in terms of the physical and mental supports. So in that sense, which bodies act as a basis for this absorption of cessation and what type of mental states, what type of minds. Right, so what's being said first is again it's divided into dependence on which bodies, those who can and those who can't enter into this state or the absorption of cessation. Firstly, who are those that can't? Ordinary beings, stream enterers, once returners, hero foe destroyers, liberated solely by wisdom, do not enter the absorption of cessation. So, liberated solely by wisdom, they will have separated from the negative attributes of desire of the three realms by wisdom, but not entered this absorption of cessation. Ale soke. This first being who can't meditate or get, is not a suitable basis for the absorption of cessation is called ordinary being. In Tibetan, the word is born new teeth, like a baby, like the baby, because such beings are not fit vessels to directly get insight into reality. So therefore, ordinary beings. Yeah. So in terms of knowledge, we are just like babies. Don't take it to heart that I'm talking about your body. Don't get offended. Talking about knowledge. And the reason they are called ordinary beings is because they have not gotten the path of bliss, the supramundane path not manifested in mind. Right, so then the latter category that are other than the ordinary beings, stream enterers, once returners, hero foe destroyers, they have not attained the actual peak of existence. So they're not qualified either to get the absorption of cessation. So who is qualified? Who can? Non-returners who actualize the body, meaning that they will have traversed and they will have gone through the peak of cyclic existence. And then where it says hero foe destroyers who are liberated from the two factors are that peak and seeing the truth, supermundane path. Yeah. Okay. Right, and then we have the source that validifies the above. So non-returners who actualize the body, and also no more learners liberated from the two factors enter the absorption of cessation. Root yana vehicle. For the great vehicle, they enter absorption in it from the second instant of the first ground that is not preceded by a Hinayana path. In other words, they go straight into the great vehicle, and in the second moment of the first ground, second instant, if you will, they can enter into that cessation of absorption. Chanchisemparwa. Bodhisattva yana. Do.
number the yes at this so she so me she said they gonna go when under she again and changes the race give them a lot of any chances are you in jet getting you one tunnel getting you in jet thing is single number give thing is single number give thing is said 아니 미디어 관계야 도트면이 띵이 지시고 띵이 좀 유모 쉬죠 봐 어디 싱글 넘버 기회 띵이 있어
The source then is the Sutra of the Peak Application of the Path of Seeing, having differentiated the qualities of those 9. So those 8 liberations, isn't it? 4 of the 4 dhyanas, 4 of the absorptions, and then the 9th one, the cessation of absorption. One enters the meditative stabilization of the loftily looking lion. Why? Here it is a specific type of single pointed concentration that outshines any obstacle. There are many types of single pointed concentration. This is one. That is the basis or the bodily support. So it depends on what type of mental support or mind next. Right, so those 2 factors of mind are independence on karma abiding, that is an actual absorption on the peak of existence, and secondly, supramundane mind, that is special insight. Right, so here is very clear what is stated as the 2 factors on a causal level that the practitioner needs to get the absorption of cessation. The quotations from Sutra are very useful to essentialize that. The first one is, Bhikshu, you must act to cherish the 2 qualities by entering the absorption of cessation. What are the 2? They are calm abiding and special insight. Calm abiding relating to the peak of existence, special insight relating to supermundane path. But then the latter quote below that from a Sangha's compendium kind of adds to that in terms of detail. What is an absorption of cessation that has separated from attachment to the source of nothingness and is directed upwards to the peak of existence? That is calm abiding. And then that which is the supramundane path is special insight. Yeah. Today microphone.
Yeah, battery don't. They don't have extra battery. No. Yeah, 세상 당부 고발은 좀 봐줘. 근데 시지심라 되네 주고요. 레스트 저기 세상 지구를 타be 주도 쓰세. 먼저 내려와. 먼저 되외미 심래 속이 심데스 타워요래.
Yeah.
속래 숨이 타워요래. 숨이 남네야 아니 시지디 타셔자고. 딜레장 타워는 고발은 좀 봐줘도 되네. 타be 주도 쓰세데.
Yeah, so bringing us back to this quote from the Treasury of Knowledge at the conclusion of the subtle. So remember, we're going from the form, which is grosser, to formless, which is more subtle, to the peak, which is even more subtle. And this is even more subtle than the peak of cyclic existence. So therefore, that is there.
다 당부터 업되던데 친행에와 요 말해서로. 친해 아니 고 chanju semba ta macha chanju semba de zere chanju semba de zege ani shendyo ge che de dingi de la zai jang ge yuzang tangbo goba nyum ju chi siji la de ne goba nyum ju gomara ta de ne gognyo la ya dang yun de ne debe sim ngon de che yang goba la nyum ba ju yang goba la ya dang yang samde ge sugi sim ngon de che yang goba la nyum ba ju yang goba la nyum ba dang yang sumi ge sim nyum ba ju to shine pe ne dingi de la zai 정기 요레스티 chanju sembe기다 딩이들 제자야디 답시 심 라과직 심 타와직 심 라과직 심 타와직 심 라과직 타와직 베네네 심 두스제제다 심로 정다데야 림바디 시기 요레스
But such a mode is not definitive because the bodhisattvas use these absorptions as a training ground and will go through those 9 levels because they are skilled in means. So, for example, they will go from gross to subtle. They will start in the desire realm and then get a cessation of absorption. Then they'll go into a form realm absorption and then go back into a grosser one and then yet back into a formless one and back into a gross one and train like that.
다디네 류덴데레 양 미나르 아니 고바 당보 고면디 미 류덴라 겨 치수 여와요 말을 하다 저리 투게 된라 아니 고바 예송도 저리 투에스나 다 소단 수미 저리 투마다 소단 수미다 데벨 하다 데베 미다 당연도다 고면요 말어 저리 투 마링에 나오다 데바체 수체 수미체 아니 데벨 하레 데벨 하드제 고바 냠지 고면 요레스로
Yeah, gisla sarduto e mangchewa minunetino.
당보디 미나 고바 당보 미나 되스 아니 공룡 제니 공룡 마냥바지 시웨이나 할라지 겨울랑도 다랑 공룡 곰통고 여러 어디 시와
Okay. So what's being said is that, the cessation initially is generated in a human support, page 62, and once it's been generated, that doesn't necessarily have to be a given, that it's a human support. One can then be in the desire realm, God realm, and use those meditations as it says below.
다 템버 공룡을 안신 시와스데 템버 공룡을 안신 시와들라 친이 예와 산잠 공룡의 남자 시와다 시 신리도
So then going through the supported absorption of cessation, because we've looked at the support, so that's the mental state, isn't it? So then that is definition, division, boundary, and explanation.
다 친이도 가서는 가시디로 가시 천두라고 가세 시디 이 경우는 가는 이 여러 이 참모 띵데 세상 이 참모스 되면 니 구베 내가 그 이죠로 어디로 시그 여러다 이당 이점 말아 근데 이 참모 라야디 그래서 니 구베 내가 라 이딘데 여러 어딘데 그 소리 이디 띵도 가자 안에 총대라고 쓰다 소와 뒤시 sem바라고 참모 가게 어디 저 퍼주지 아니 뇽주디게 데민디지 세기도 다 데민디지시오.
Okay, so reminding us here at the bottom of page 62 in terms of how it's defined, that it is a very subtle mental consciousness, similar to the type of consciousness we have when we're sleeping. It is a non-associated compositional factor in the Arias continuum, and it's distinguished by having ceased the coarse concomitants, the objects to be ceased, with respect to that subtle mental consciousness we just mentioned, which is its basis.
그래서 디 당보건서 지원하라. 그래서 단도 저는 두주 우중 공연은 셈로 셈 세리차 셈데 하고나 셈라 셈 세리차라 미 연데 되네가블라 남도라고 상모 가도데 연구여와 우중을 당가자 비데데 남도라고 가 연구도 최선 디인데 다 이데 단데 셈데 띵라 아니 초상에 직두시상에 상마가 되어지다 용사를 삼삼시로 어디 고고 다들 상노다나 용티베 여바지 수수 그래서 상노다한테 야고요라
It's good to reflect on these because when you do the breathing meditations and you start to be aware of the aspect of your mind, which is clarity and knowing, or clear and experiential, then that gross level of mental constructs ceases. And similarly, as is stated here, what is stopping are those gross levels of feelings and discriminations.
다 예와들란 된지고데 년도 란제 티젠지 공용 숨제로.
Yeah. So divisions are going to be here as solitary realizers, bodhisattva yana practitioners, and so forth.
다 영어고네 이네 니 탄의 뇽적의 공용당 퇴계기 뒤에 공용이신 탄의 뇽적 세야도 제원디 당보 삼대 신의 톱로와 신의 톱 삼대 당보 톱 니와 숨바시와 드네 숨에 나가다 남시 제미 시즈네 아니 고발을 뇽바 주더니 방제도송하대.
Okay. So now let's look at the entity or the nature. What is the character of cessation of absorption? Here we can approach it either in a serial manner or in terms of leaping. In terms of serial, as we mentioned, first one would accomplish calm abiding and then traverse the various dhyanas, first, second, third, fourth, and then up into the formless round absorptions, like, what is it? Consciousness, limitlessness, nothingness, and then peak, and then up into the fine levels, like that. So that is doing it in a serial manner.
대드네 퇴계의 뒤에 뇽줄라디 다 시지지로 고발을 뇽마주로와
Yeah.
다 니네야 방제 만들어체 아니 삼대 중국실로 뇽중근데 맞아야지 숨이 나가타이로 삼대 당보 많이 뭐지 삼대 니버다버지 심양원데 그냥 고발을 뇽바주디 퇴는 계속하다고.
Right.
어디를 퇴계 뇽중.
So then one can approach it also in a leaping manner without doing it particularly in that order. You could obtain the cessation of absorption and then go straight into, for example, the second dhyana, the second level of meditative concentration.
다 디네 남이 뇽주지 거네나 니 깨네 뇽주 렌다슐 뇽주 남이 짐바 망가 깨네 뇽주사데 공용 공배 땡디 니 기지 니와 다그란라야 공용 깨야데 용구여 가르서나 공용 톤네 마냠발라 껴렌바이나 공용데 되게요다 류된 주베이나 공용관라 대두고요다.
The way of experiencing the fruition of the meditative state are threefold. That experienced on rebirth, meaning that very moment, if that state of absorption does not degenerate, then you attribute the body therein.
전에 렌다시는 이제 겨와니기 전에 아니 겨와 배대 갑장갑제 두개 된데래 공용기 뉴바디 데도 마냠바 데도야 된데 용고요.
And that experienced in a life other than the next can be at some other future life up to hundreds, but again, as long as there hasn't been a degeneration of the meditative absorption.
남이 짐바 망해봤어도 인지미지기 공용기 레부디 인지미지기 미고야게 매버던데 용고요라서.
And then there's a third case that the result might not be definite to ripen at all.
하드네 숨바 산삼디 치모 룽은제네 제제네 산제기 세팔요레서.
The boundaries they range from non-returner who actualizes the body through to the Buddha ground. Page 63.
다드네 시와 공용 남샤 셰바들라야 아니 sabje khazure dune yeris도데 제도와.
Now the tenets will produce the presentation of the absorption of cessation. 8 categories, no less.
다 당부 강사 강근 연마쇼와 사간라 되면 람칸라 템바세 디제디 당기 셰심바레와 도사레서.
So just make a note here that the first 3 of them, the person who enters absorption, the ground on which it's supported, and the path on which it's supported, they have already been gone through above. So bracket those together and say, you kind of bracket them into the bodily and the mental supports we went through.
다 시와디 일레체와 강한스디 가르치는 꿀론라고지 가르치는 공부여라 이지 가르치도 공부여라 라는데 시와들라 팀메바 남지는 손들하고 원래 이교네로 제가 손들하고 다 끼우면 디 강에서 그래서 다 동해 이교네 들레 시외네 동해다 이미대발서와 초와당 두지 신줄로 내던데 송에다 대다 녀와시외 아니 고고괴념 고바직다 녀시 내가기 다 양대 따위지요나 양대군에다 말했다고 연대 때 딘데지 요나 따데 토고도 삼제네 뇽바주고 용거 레스로
Right. So, what is the attitude or attention with which one would enter such an absorption? Well, the Rujana practitioners, the Hinayanists, would be fed up with these gross feelings and discriminations, much as we would be with the emotions. Those emotions are no good. So, seeing them in the nature of suffering and mental displeasure, they will seek to get over them. And seeing by that the cessation of those is pacification is very like nirvana. Then they get the thought, if nirvana is like that, one should go for nirvana. It is not nirvana, but it is similar.
다 티진지 온데 셴네 티진 바트서 그 참바다 닝지 삼백군네라네 셴데 코나라미네 뇽바주고 레스로
The Mahayana Bodhisattva trainee, however, will just for the benefit of others with love and compassion enter into absorption just for their benefit.
지나 그래서는 띵인지 제조버 탐내로 띵이 제스도 제심 심 참모직지야 심라고직 심 참모직 심라고직 심 참모직 심라고직도 선 띵인지 빼기도 하고
Yeah. So here the Bodhisattva is using the absorptions as a training ground. Gross, subtle, gross, subtle, gross, subtle, like that.
다드네 나와 가족 한국 와서야 돼 령감수 고발은 뇽바 주베세 아니 공룡지 가져 주베 남시 초축제 로 먼저 되베 미기 가야 될 남시 초축 미기 나시 나는 이제 이 남시 바 남시 초축과 돼 요래서
top of page 64, what object to be stopped is stopped. So the objects, the 6 collections of primary consciousnesses, we can recognize those in the desire realm, right? So like sights for the eyes and so forth, those sense faculties plus the mental.
다드네 수감라 남시 초시레스로
The form realm has 4 consciousnesses attributed to it.
나다지 나진이디 요 말에 나진이디.
What the form realm does not have are the, what is it? Taste and, what's that one called where you smell?
나지.
Not oral factory, thank you. The nose and the taste they don't have. Sorry, Krishna.
간다 델라 티단 로니 요 말에 술라.
Yeah. So they don't have smell and they don't have taste in that form realm.
제단디 감세라고라 되자다 테로.
Yeah, and that's because they have separated from the gross realms or the gross kind of desire attributes, isn't it?
다 수메간라 남시 이기 남시 찍보래 남시 찍찍보.
And then in the formless realm, there's just the primary consciousness, just that.
다 두바디 ngô 강이 제바세들. 다디 기생 저다 셰바 다우다오래로.
Right, and then the entity or nature of it is similar to what we had in Abhidhammakosha.
다 사제 성미 니다네 상메레스로.
So from amongst the two of contaminated or uncontaminated, it is uncontaminated, the absorption of cessation is that.
다 상메세데 코디오스네 땡디 파괴 줄면시 요 말에도 코나니 세부 자루로.
Yeah, you know that it's uncontaminated because it is only located within the continuum of an Arya being.
다드네 니 제다 니다네 따위 스타탄다디 제단디 멘다 창고도.
Right, and then amongst the two of imputed or substantial, it is an imputed existent.
제단 따위세데 단다디 셰게요레. 베나 주데스시 단데갑 따위세데 베나가서 기생마 자연바 탭디. 먼저 탭디 심나라 샤요인데 니 당보 되게 박바다 입디게 심나 샤고다.
Yeah.
아니 티 박바다 입디 심나라 샤 근데 제라니 탭지도 samlo 시게도. 나 탭디 따요레스. 좀제 가르스나 탭이로이 차올라 최신로이 차올라 되어레스. 최신 가르스나 대구 입단 박바다 가도 디게디 당보 심나라 샤 아니 치즈 탭샤가도 와 제단 탭디 따요레스.
Right, so we to understand imputed existent. Remember we gave the example of the book. So before the book can appear in the mind, the appearance of the book has to depend on like the cover and the shape of the book. So in dependence on the appearance of the cover and the shape, then we can kind of posit book. So it is an imputed existence.
베테나시 베나단다 고베님주디 가시기 남시 참여딩되네 가자 소두라고 각베 소두라고 각베 박유기 담미디지라서 이제 담미디지들 로를 샤발라 가시 이기 남시 참모딜 로를 샤온건 로그다 이제 가시 이기 남시 참모디 고베님주 마로 와셔서 타고 다다다유 차르고도 하고
Right, and then similarly for this state of the absorption of cessation, it has to, for it to be there, it has to have a subtle mind prior to it. So that state then of the cessation of absorption is a non-associated compositional factor, isn't it? That's abiding in the state of having ceased coarse concomitance. But even prior to that, there has to be a subtle mind there. So therefore, it is imputed.
다드네 개소성난의 겨월에 꿀론지 겨월에서 오니 겨면 꿀론지 지상 꿀론 겨월 손상 고 겨월 차례서 등한저 뒤지 먼저다 꿀론세 개정부 쉬우 임바디 차도 안한저 겨월 안한 상물로다 간대 지금 여러 검제고 여러 가래 좀맛 려가로 버지 가래 고마서 고나 꿀론디 베디 주링도 마도베 축축축 꿀론디 상노시단도 베이나 안저디 저 간체버디 꿀론 찾는 겨월 로사를 다가라는 베디 자자로 shumbu지 론사로 와. 야고 쉬지도 하시나.
And then from amongst the three factors, one should know verse 108 of virtuous, non-virtuous, non-specified. The absorption of cessation is virtuous because it is a motivational virtue attained through that very force of virtuous intent. As I'm always encouraging, check one's motive to motivate well, because if one does that, then the result will be virtuous. That's a very important point.
나 공용 코란 선두 저다 뒤시 가면 저것이 그 동상상라고 싫어.
Yeah.
이는 개화차에 가서는 고고벌 녀마 마주고 꿀론데 개화소면 인자. 아니 그 데미디제 되고 개화차요인데. 만나서 최단 류가게 자와로 가르치고 있는 꿀론데 개화 숙청부 요나 아니 자와디제 되고 그런 꿀론 찬에 개화차로 이나 아니 배 납첨부도 와대. 편도 전부도 와대로.
Although it is the, cessation of absorption, it is virtuous because the motivational factor is to cease the gross levels of feelings and discriminations. And when they are abated, if one has motivated in a virtuous manner, the result will be virtuous. So although the cessation might seem like it's like a vacuity, and dependence on the intent before it becomes virtuous. This is very similar to the fact that if you motivate well mentally, the bodily support will follow in a virtuous action.
It is
like prior to sleep. If you motivate well before sleep, then all the sleep becomes virtue. How long then? What is the duration at the bottom of 64 of that absorption? So for the root yana vehicle practitioners, however long they fling the mind, in other words, however long they intend, if I want to stay in that absorption for a kalpa, they will stay. If they choose to stay for 100 years, they will stay absorbed for that span. Bodhisattvas, it is not fixed. They will do it according to the needs of the disciples. Right. So for the purpose of the disciples to be matured is not definite for the bodhisattva because they enter absorption in accordance with the thinking of those to be subdued. For example, the bodhisattva Dharmodgata entered absorption in a single meditative stabilization for up to 7 years for the sake of Sada Praruditar, the always crying one, generating the discrimination that excellent Dharma is rare, profound, and the like.
그래서 제가 그러나서 다가 최 먼저 타바디 딱 그러나서 줄인 거 최래 대화연이 최대쇼 쇼도 최 낭매쇼야 최라 난중쇼야 최라 린다마 통해야 돼 년가 전부에서 최 린다한테 개천부 쇼저 린다한테 찍고 요래서 아니 하과도 딱 변나 배차샤비나 먼저 시르도 가르쳐야도 이 삼는 양성에서 땅 그랬어. 대양생에서 땅다 아니 뒤지 마디 지고 니자 아다 대다 개좀 내가도 마사나 마사다 그 시르도니 개민도 그러 아니 데스 흐르 다야다 페페인데 최디 최래야 최기 딱 가서 린당데 신고래 린당데 메나 벨루디 마시나나 아니 가고 싶으지래
예, 육사 잡시.
되네 낭매 당도 근데 최래 린당마도나 최진일에 낭매 쇼고도 미망고 근데 저거도 안 가서 미지 메지 돌아다니러는데 통로다 닌자 가지고 먼저 건조 파 메지 돌아다니 통 건조 건조 주 메지 돌아다니 통로도 알아.
The purpose then of those bodhisattvas is to encourage practitioners to see the value of Dharma. There's a danger that having practiced Dharma for a long time, one could lose to see the value or even get to a stage of wanting to give up. Here, it is very important to think again and again on one's death. What will you really need to take with you at your time of death? People are thinking all the time, I need to finish projects 1, 2, and 3. But actually, if you really think on your death deeply, you will be more relaxed and the Dharma will come more to the fore. There is a danger also for some people that they practice Dharma for a while, then they don't care and they give up. Well, if we look at them, we might think, oh, they're wasting their life. If they look at us, they might think we're wasting our life.
No, some people thinking, they're making lots of money and they build, I bought their house, I bought the car, what point, They're thinking we are nothing much do. I think they're nothing much do. I'm listening, talking. Buy a house, this, buy a car, this. Oh, what benefit? Well, the shake do that. That the two, the Chazan Tanda, the Pagwa Tangugi, in the Cheva Tundala, that chu. And in the zoo, this love in a war in that Tangu, that Cheva Luju to the
Yeah.
The bear chu, the Pagwa Tangu, Cheva. Chö shua tunda lu zong rwa, su lu zong, rindang besha mewa che, chö lu zong je, lu ki gangla tu su zong yin de che, yang tenpa su, an je la chö shua di, yang du ki chawa ma wa che, tela shio je cha di, kurang ki cha ti wa jab je, di tela mewa su rwa, tu su chö기 치도 가져 갈래 잡아도 먼저 디제도 먼저 갈래 치 잡면 들어와 먼저 다 대화 장모서야래 자성모도 와라 먼저 다 지게 띵모 자야래 자성모라 버지 제네 바고당에 chö기 치도 차도 디고 잡지 사가나 테레 먼저 주저 증이 지 숨지 최저도 chö치설라 따야래
It is moving to read the historical accounts of such bodhisattvas, always crying one, and how they saw the value of Dharma, literally putting their bodies on the line. So in some cases, selling parts of the body to get Dharma, and or if it became very dusty before hearing the teaching, to spread one's blood on the ground to stop the dust. difficult for us to do that. Could we not even clean the Dharma center? Could we not even clean the Dharma center for a few hours, let alone put that type of effort into the Holy Dharma?
다 제바디 감관라 뇽바 주고 사들어 다디바 사우스션 들 다디 당게디 지고래 감숨게 된라 뇽바 주고 요레스 당보 아니 툭당 시당 직당 슬랍다데 비제나라와 지라 레젤레 템바미바 남지네 고바뇽바 남지네 남시 툭당 시당 직당데 되바 소당 소메 감구림시노 신송다 툭디 남시 초 두가게 된라 님시 진디 되베 감체 시디 수기 감체 직디는 수메지 감체 감숨나야네 고벌 뇽바 주고 요레서 어디 셰레
The realm where one enters such a cessation of absorption, page 65 at the bottom. It is from the text, from the source, great exposition on particulars. The expression unstable qualities refers to the 6, 4, and 1 collections. So the 6 are those attributes of the desire realm, based therein, then 4 of the form, and then the 1 collection of the primary consciousness of the formless realm. Those are the realms.
제가 다디 먼저 chanju sem바다 년도 관람 치모 두저게 곰잡도와 저도 셈발라 고바 카레라나 아니 다람 지메 주주지 람야리도 람노 미코바라 람 로발라 만도야게 아니 펜도 전부 연구요로
Why, what's the purpose then of these states of cessation for the bodhisattvas and non-returners? The purpose is that when they start to see a valid path, they will not go down a mistaken one.
다 류기 된라 가지 류기는 게 지다도 디시메 뉴주 차도다 류이 된라 손들어 가운데 디시메가 차 심게 된라 차도 고변님제다 고변님제다 파괴 줄라면서요 말은 다 디시메 님제를 삼디 시행무시 타고 열다로 레로요 말이
All right. So then remembering those 2 levels of body and mind, the first level of the cessation of gross discrimination is related to the body, and that is when you attain that 4th dhyana state, that 4th concentration. But, for that mental level of the cessation of absorption, that is only in the Arya's minds. So these are not easy states either way to accomplish.
Oh yeah, that is shower.
Stop for today.
Page 31, short mandala.
Poji tushi metta tra rira linji nike gempati
Sangye jingdu mikte uadi Drokunanda jingla
Japa sho
Jetsalame
Kuserapteshi
Nakatrin me chokshu ge pada Lezang tenje
Deme sansumchi Dwe muse tato ne yuji
Guru Rama Mandala Kambiriyataya.
Page 33, prayers of dedication. Due to the merit of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain
The state of the
Gyo
Guru Buddha.
and he will live in These are the Wayo, changes in your rebuji, Majipana Gichi, Yovan Kono Bewajo, Chandra, the Church of Wadan, Jedi, Jezo, Jimbo, Pararigo, Canada, Manager, the Church of the Shabesi de Vado de Yuji, Canada, Manager, Church of the Ever the man and you are dear, you the Dalan and you do what you man. So now the other just one year, one of you know, the Kata, the Chevelle, the Civil Land, or much. Church was on my way, just another one of you, the Mashona, the German, and so on. Ajoji Ganu Gorishinga, dependent development, Chile, and what did they do? Shabbat, but the Dinju. Chandel, the Jewish one, the Jelly, which is all you go to the Tanjado, which is